Greetings from the Long Island Sound podcast. Welcome to the show. Please rate, review, and comment on the show, and call our listener line and leave a message for our guests. Dial 631-800-3579. All right, enjoy the show.
Thanks for joining us for the Long Island Sound podcast. Each week we explore new music and dive deeper with the artists and their stories behind the music. Please subscribe and rate and review us wherever you stream this podcast. Here's your host, Steve Yusko.
Hey, thanks for joining us for part 2 of the episode with Chris Marshak, a wonderful producer, arranger, drummer, and percussionist. I'm joined by my sidekick, Steve Martino, a previous guest on the program. If you haven't listened to part 1, please do. You'll get a great foundation. We explore so many things, but there was so much to unpack that we had to put it in a second episode. Steve Martino had a question for Chris, so let's join the conversation.
Yeah, I'll just, it was referenced around the experience of taking a piece of music that you are now going to accompany somebody with. And in my case, just to reiterate it again, a piano player brought in the song. Initially, the way it was a simple progression, but a really great melody, but it was originally started almost with a Latin feel. And the more, as Chris was saying, sometimes knowing when to play less is a benefit. And as we pulled elements out of the song and tried to simplify it, it actually got stronger. But we benefited from the fact that we were all together in a room. We had a week. We were practicing a lot. We just kept hashing or woodshedding the piece, as you call it. And it developed into what it finally became. I'm curious to how you approach it, Chris, when you're working in a studio where you may not have all the people. You may only have the composer, and they may not be, as you said, as experienced in being in a recording setting, or you're hearing something in the song that could make it stronger. How do you approach that when you don't have the whole band and come across with that feel and import yourself into it? And I hope I'm saying that correctly. I just want to get your take on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think every artist is different, and you're going to be in there in a level of experience, and their vision of what they want is different, and some people, I'm fortunate enough at this point that the people that hire me, they usually have heard what I've done. There's something about my vibe or whatever that they want in their music. So that creates a dynamic where there's an openness, where rather than it's in a transactional state where you're going to hire me, I'm going to hire you, you're going to do what I tell you to do, like an employee-based thing. It's more of a collaborative thing. Mm-hmm. And so I think the idea that, especially when in the studio, I forget, maybe it was Daniel Lenoir I heard an interview with, but he talked about when you're in the studio and someone has an idea, always follow it through to the end. The truth will reveal itself. Because if you in the studio and you go, or if you kind of, people are, especially artists, are emotional beings. And if someone has an idea, there's a vulnerability, and you say, let's try it. And then after we can listen back. Very often you'll play a song a few times and you'll say, let's take a break. Let's go in and listen. So now you're putting your instruments down and you're listening. And in there, very often, the truth reveals itself. That busy part that you thought sounded really cool, is like, oh, wow, it's not coming across that way. And then, there's a point of like, what can we do to, it's a collective collaboration. It's not like, hey man, you got to change your things. Like, what can we do to make this feel better? I have some thoughts. I think I could play a little less. What do you, how much you feel about maybe, where you're starting, maybe save that part, start a little less and save that maybe for the outro of the song, and it's a cool part, but maybe we're giving it away too soon in the song. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like a curious dialogue. And sometimes I am, if I have to be honest, I'm trying to lead it in a certain direction. But I think the important part about being in the studio is how you do that, because you want it to be, ultimately you want the artist to feel like they've arrived at that because it's best for their song. And sometimes that takes a minute of trying. I may, from doing this so many years, we may ultimately spend an hour and get to where I kind of knew it needed to go there. But if the artist went through that process, and they make the decision on their own, it feels better to them sometimes than if you impose your will, and especially if they're trying it, and it's a balance. I think that sometimes you're in a situation, someone's committed to something that's maybe different than the vision you had for the song, and sometimes I have to go with that. You can't, it's their project and ultimately their decision. So, I think each situation is different, but at the end of the day, I want to try to make great music. And sometimes that takes all of us, not just me doing what I want. It's being a part of something, and also being open to things. Very often, sometimes someone it's their song, they might not have the language to articulate, or they're not trained and schooled in music in the same way that I am, or some of the other musicians are. But the sentiment of what they're talking about, it's like, oh yeah, that's right. That's what the lyric's about, and let's pause on this section or on this lyric. And, I think the thing about music is you learn things that work, but each song and each artist, it's a new opportunity to discover something that you didn't realize before. And so I think that curiosity that I've talked about already today is the recipe to get the music to where it needs to be.
You bring up a good point, and it's almost like a sales point. The best decisions that people feel that they came to that conclusion, even though you led them in that direction, is going to sit better with the artist over time because they've kind of internalized it. And that's a good way to approach it, Hey, let me ask you this. Go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
No, and I think, from very often, as I mentioned earlier, I don't lose sight of an artist who's going there and they're hiring me.
Sure.
They're paying for the studio time and they're spending their money. So I want to respect that, and also part of my job is to help them be mindful in those regards, and sometimes I will speak up about a certain situation, like something, for example, at a session I did recently, and it was a slow ballad, and they wanted and I wasn't going to enter till the second verse. So when they were playing it, and the songwriter had kind of had a little bit of difficulty, and he made a mistake, and then we kept going back to the beginning. So I said to him, why don't we use a click? I said, because this way, if we have to punch, we can, and I'm not coming in. And I think from a time frame, it'll help us maximize the time rather than having to go back to the beginning on every single take. This will give us a perspective to allow us to do this in a quicker way, which is ultimately going to, I didn't say this to the artist, but it's going to save them money. It's going to, I could sense the frustration that they're having to go back. And sometimes sometimes you play something and it's very natural. It's a first take, and it's like something you could talk about in a music magazine. But sometimes, very often, recording is rolling your sleeves up, and it's work, and it's playing it a few times and fixing and punching a different section, and it's at the end, so I will offer my suggestion if I feel it's going to be helpful, both musically and financially too, to the person who's spending their hard-earned money. I'm mindful of that. I'm always mindful of that,
Sure. So explain to me the different roles of a person who lays down tracks to, you potentially, maybe you don't do this anymore, pass it off to somebody else who mix it. What's that whole process? How does that come together?
Well, I think for me, a big part of what I do at my studio is I record here. I record all the tracks here. But the mixing is something that it's a worthwhile, as people have their own home studios and they invest in that and allows them to save money in their recording. My personal opinion is I think mixing is what can make a home recording sound like an album.
Okay.
Mixing is an art. It's an art. And the people that are good at it, there's a reason they're good at it. And oftentimes that when you're recording a song and the artist, you've listened to it so much, or someone with a fresh set of ears too, at that point, can sometimes add to the thing, add to what you've created, just because maybe it's a new set of ears. But I like that flow with the stuff I do here. I have people, I've mixed some stuff here, but I when I have something I'm excited about, I want it to sound as good as it can. And I think that mixing is a worthwhile investment in the modern day recording world where people are doing things themselves. That's one avenue I would tell a songwriter. Record it yourself. You know, that's one thing. But if you really want it to sound great, the mixing it's a worthwhile investment, you know. And also it's you know, in the same way we talked about the Steve Windwood track where he heard me play. It's a way for an artist to get their music in front of somebody that maybe is a producer out there that they're a fan of. And they would love to. And now all of a sudden that person, you're hiring that person, they're listening to your songs, you know. And again, does that mean that they're going to refer you? No, but does it allow for the possibility of some other thing that could happen or opportunity? I think, yeah. It you know, I'm in a favor of doing things that add a degree of possibility to things that you never know.
First of all, I agree with so many things you said about, you know, just even from the beginning. One of the things I learned early on playing drums is, you're right. I mean, even the story you told about finding a drum set, I had the same situation in my cousin's house. I found his drum set. Whoa.
Oh, wow.
And I just got like lit up, and I played it for like 3 hours, and I didn't even think I was doing anything. And they all came downstairs and were like, you know, that was pretty good. Like, where'd you learn to do that? I don't know. I just picked up the sticks. And so same experience. But I do remember crystal clear in my mind how there was that moment of, I'll call it a revelation. Like, I listened to this guy playing in a school setting. He was orchestra de camera, and they came in and they were playing and they had a jazz quartet. And the guy just had a 4-piece drum set. And he sat there and he played so, I'll call it minimalist for lack of a better word. And it was perfect. And I remember my music teacher looking at me and said, "What'd you think of that guy?" I said, I thought it was amazing. And he goes, "Yeah, now you're listening." And that stuck with me for the rest of my life, because up to that point, I not to knock what he's always done, but Keith Moon was always like nonstop. He just, to the point that every break was like, oh, there's another break. It's another break. It's another fill. To the point now you leave that space in between and you have that fill. It means so much more, or it comes across so much stronger.
Well, yeah. I think what you're saying is, you know, I always think about this, you know, people, you talk about high school, you know, or a period of time, and people who talk, you know, and somebody who's incessantly talking all the time, you know. And what happens if they're a person who talks all the time? Sometimes, you know, they could utter the cure for cancer and you might not hear it because you're just ear fatigued.
Exactly.
But then you have somebody who doesn't speak, you know, speaks quietly and doesn't say much, but when they do talk, because it comes out of silence, it's so much more impactful.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that for me musically, you know, it's kind of
same.
It's always on my mind, you know, the things that, you know, when things come out of silence, they have more impact.
Right.
And, you know, we live in a world, you know, the internet is filled with, you know, Buddy Rich's.
It's so true.
It's so beautiful. And that's it.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it is so, you know, people are wowed by like you say, you watch the YouTube videos and there's that young girl.
Yeah.
Can't even think of her name, doing all those, and she's fantastic.
So many. Yeah, she's great.
But if you only watch that, and she's very good, and the fact that she knows how to do that is fantastic. But you also, like you say, have to know, I've got the chops to do that. I also know when not to use them.
The other thing too is, you know, an Instagram is 60 seconds. I mean, I think in the world of singer-songwriters and songs, you know, if you're not playing on the first verse and the chorus, you coming in, you know, later in the song, and then you play a fill, and a very simple fill, what is considered a simple fill, not a busy thing, but the timing of that fill and the choice to put it there is something you don't get that flavor on Instagram, because they'll go right to the fill to show you. And, you know, I think about my early listening experiences very often was the outro of a song, you know, where they would do a fade, and you would crank the fade up because the drummer there was going to be something cool happening going out, and you would not hear it. But if you cranked it up, it was like the singer was done singing, the band was playing, there was this interactive moment, and they would let loose a little bit at that point of the song. So there was an off-time fill, or there was something unique that happened, and you would crank it up just to hear it and be inspired by it. And I think with the internet, and in 60-second modes, the idea we got to impress people. There's an ego component to that. And look, if you're playing, that's what you're starting. I mean, I believe me, I look at them and I know from a technical standpoint how challenging that stuff is. That being said, I'm at a point in my life where I'd rather listen to a singer-songwriter play with an acoustic guitar with no drums or percussion on a song that moves me than to watch a chop fest, which is just to be, I was having a conversation with my friend, and we were talking about bebop jazz, and we're talking about the evolution of jazz, and we were discussing the fact that, originally jazz was dance was the popular music, and it was the dance music, and very often it was black musicians playing for white people to dance, and these very black musicians were not allowed to frequent the places that they were working in. And over time, the music changed, and it became more, obviously you think about bebop, where it was some of its avant-garde, where it was like, you forget dancing, you're lucky if you could find the beat. But the part of that was a FU to there's a little bit of that's built into that music, is like, we're not here just to make you dance. We're here to express ourselves. And that when you listen to that music, and that's what my friend and I were discussing, that is part of that music, is that we're not here just to make you dance. And so when you look at jazz and stuff like that, to understand, as I get older, I appreciate the psychology of that, and you really could understand the frustration. I could imagine, right? And just what that would be like. And I think that one of the beautiful things about music is it's one of the things, I think, sports and music. It does not matter what you look like. It's what you bring into the table. And I think, whether those are two professions or two areas in our life that it's about results and what you bring, not the way you look or the color of your skin. Not that those things haven't affected those things at different time, but I think, what I love about music is the bringing together of cultures and people, I'm very thankful. Music's been my best friend my whole life. It's led to so many great relationships among friends. It's led me to learn things about the world, and I'm very grateful that I went down into my friend's basement and he wasn't ready, and his grandmother told me to go down there, because had that not happened, I might not have had the opportunity to play those drums.
I think what has changed, I was talking to somebody the other night about, I said, hey, when I was a kid, we got an album, and we listened to that album till we wore the needle out. But now it seems the trend is to put out EPs, to put out 2-3 songs. And this is just my opinion. I think it's an attention span thing. To keep the audience, you got to come out with 1 or 2 or 3 songs actually pretty quickly, like you're making ice cream cones.
Well, yeah, I think it's a singles market. I work with a lot, artists. They're doing like a song. One, it's economics. They can record one song. The recording an album is much more costly, and it takes a longer period of time. You record a song, you can go from beginning to end in a shorter time period, and you can get the music out to the world. And with social media has changed the game. I think a lot of things that have changed, not to get too into the weeds as far as the technical bit of things, but music today, when it's made for radio, it's mastered so that the beginning is like, you look at it, it's a line of sound that's filling up the whole space from the verse to the end. It's this block. Whereas the older recordings that we grew up listening to, they didn't have that. It was an intro that was quiet. And if you looked at that wave, it was small. And as the song went on, it got louder and louder. And the chorus was actually louder than the other parts of the song. So from a journey aspect, when you were listening, and, whether it was Zeppelin and certain songs came in and the chorus came in, it was louder. It not only was it powerful playing, but the actual volume because our ears, it took us on a journey. It didn't hit us. The verse wasn't as loud as the chorus, but now it's almost like everything is so in your face that some of that is definitely lost. And that's one of the things I loved about, the music I listened to growing up was that it actually crescendoed. And when the rock guitar came in and it hit you in the chest, it was just really impactful in a way that I don't know necessarily, it's just different now the way they do it. But I think that's part of it,
Hey, let's do this. Let's talk about the second song that you brought, I'd Rather Be. And maybe, if your memory serves, you can kind of deconstruct or construct it on basically what you're talking about, how it got pulled together. Well, maybe you could speak to that, and I'd find that very interesting. So
yeah, the song "I'd Rather Be Blues" by this artist named Robert Poe, who passed away a few years ago. He was a close friend of mine, and he was a very talented singer-songwriter and he had a unique voice as a writer, a voice as a singer. He had a crooner kind of voice. He actually toured with the Glenn Miller Orchestra as the lead vocalist for there. And he had this. You listen to the song; it's almost like a song from a past generation. This song could have been around in the 50s or the 60s, and it's just a nostalgic quality that immediately when I heard him singing it. And I remember when we were sitting down, and I sat down first with sticks, and I was playing. It's like a slow song in six. And I was playing a rim click, and it was cool, but I was just like, there was just a breathiness about him, and I remember putting the sticks down and picking up brushes, and as soon as I played the brushes with the voice and what he was playing, I'm like, this is what this song needs, I think sometimes with a song, you as drummers or musicians, we hear a song and we have a starting point wherever we start. And then from that starting point, we know, okay, well, here's the verse, so the chorus is going to be up here, and the bridge is going to be up here. But for the last few years, I've really gotten into this like reverse engineering process, and I said, what happens if where I started was as loud as I was? And let me go. What's going on below the surface there? Can I start lower even? And one way we could start lower is, brushes are it's a lifelong journey to learn to, study brushes, and you see so many people and everyone has their own style with them. But there's just a sound something about them. And I didn't play brushes till, when I first started playing, I didn't play brushes, but as I studied more and I started listening to more jazz, there was something about this idea of this sustain. The drums are a percussive instrument and, cymbals ring. But other than that, we don't really have a sustained, a buzz roll. You can do a roll, but the brushes allowed for this, and on the song, I'd Rather Be Blue, once I picked up the brushes and he looked at me and he's like, yes, you could just see this look that sometimes you're just stumbling. You don't know, you have a starting point and it sounds good, but then sometimes you can't be afraid to try something different. And even if the artist says, yeah, I'm not hearing that, you tried, and sometimes. But in this case, I picked up the brushes, and he immediately just had this look. I love that, and the part that I played on it was, it's very sparse, and I wanted to hear the shh. I wanted that to come through, like almost like a vinyl record, like an old song that you'd hear, and his voice on it is just something about. He was such a special talent. And he became a good friend, and I played on a bunch of his music. And but if you don't know about Robert Poe, look him up on whether YouTube or Spotify and check him out, because he really is he was a special songwriter and human being.
Well, the one thing we will do for our audience is we do chapter marks. So I'll definitely put the links in for Robert Poe and his music and his background, and anybody we speak about during the podcast. You'll have more information. Just look at the chapter marks as we talk about it and check it out. So without further ado, let's listen to I'd Rather Be. Check it out, everyone.
be trying to get over you, but I'd rather be blue. I've been walking, could be talking to somebody new, but I'd rather be blue. There must be a million ways to get you off my mind, but memories hurt so good that I don't even try. I ain't lazy, I'm just crazy all about you. So I'd rather be blue. There must be a million ways to get you off my mind, but memories hurt so good that I don't even try. I ain't lazy, I'm just crazy all about you. So I'd rather be blue. I should get over you, but I'd rather be blue.
We're back with Chris Marshak and my sidekick here, Steve Martino. What a beautiful composition. Thank you for bringing that to the table. Hey, Chris, tell us a little bit about your studio and about the next song we have coming up called Sideline.
The song Sideline is by this Long Island artist named Cassandra House. And Cassandra's an extremely fine singer-songwriter. And I've been playing drums with her for a few years now and played on her last record. And I've done a lot of gigs with her. And I'm a big fan of her. So I would recommend anyone to check her out on Spotify or any of the other streaming platforms. But over the pandemic, while we were all home doing not much, we recorded one of her songs. I knew a song called Sideline, and we recorded here at the Drum Shack. And I co-produced it with her because Cassandra is, she's an artist she has a vision for her music. She's open to ideas, and we have a good working relationship. She's someone that has a vision, so it was a collaborative thing, and it was a lot of fun. The band played on it, and because of the nature of COVID and we were all being individual, we came and recorded the drums, and then we recorded Cassandra, and then we had we recorded bass and guitar. We brought Dave March, who plays bass with her, and Anthony Pravada, both fine musicians, came over, and we did it over a period of time, because it was the pandemic, and I think it was a time that I think musicians, we were home, we didn't know what was going to go on, so we were trying to keep the band forward motion, so we recorded that here, and it was a song that when I remember first hearing it, was just her play it. The first thing that came to my mind was this like tribal tom thing. And I just heard the rhythm she was playing on her acoustic guitar, and I started to play this, this I'm calling it a tribal thing that was kind of, that was tribal, but didn't step on what she was doing, and the rhythm of what she was doing, and her voice, and it's kind of a rhythm I came up with that I think peeks its head up every so often, but yet, and so the snare on this song actually, which, as I was coming up with it, and this is something that I do occasionally to try to have impact, is to not use the snare at all until the chorus, and so to create a groove where the snare is not in there. And I think when you do that, and like I said before, there's no rules with this. It's not that I do it all the time, but I think at times the idea of a snare drum is such a sound. Once you hear that, it's a big thing. So by withholding that, it creates this world where it's this low end rumble from the toms with her voice, and it worked well. And then when the snare came in on the chorus, it just gave the song a lift. So in terms of my approach on that, I think that that was what I was thinking on the song. How can we make this chorus pop? And I think how you can make a chorus pop sometimes is what happens before it is just as important as what you're doing it, because the absence of the snare throughout the whole verse, I think, created a situation that when the snare came in on the chorus, it allowed the song to go somewhere. And we recorded here. It was a really fun process, and it was kind of loose. We tried some things, and it was over a period of time. It's not like we did it in a week. I think we did over a course of some months. And that also, too, we ended up, Ben Wish mixed Cass's first record, and he also mixed Sideline. And it was she's just a really creative spirit, Cassandra, and it's a pleasure to play with her. It's just, she's just somebody who just has it together, singing, playing songs. She's really, especially these last few years, really coming into her own in a really nice way. So it's really nice to get a chance to be a part of that.
So let's listen to Cassandra House and her song Sideline. Check it out, everyone. We'll be right back after the song.
Night, I dream of your wedding. I see you silhouetted, taking her face lovingly in your hands. And I watch as you come away from your kiss, eyes with the glow of a love unmissed. Solid foundation where you stand. And I watch you over and over, it seems not to me, and pass me by. You don't need me, and I don't know why. All I do every night in my dreams is watch from the sideline, walking away to a different life. each other at all. And I watch you over and over. It seems not to me and pass me by. You don't need me and I don't know why. All I do every night in my dreams is watch from the sidelines, walking away to a different life. Body turns to a shadow, a ghost. If only I were braver. Reach out, but you never come close. Turn to dust at your favor. And I watch you over and over. It seems not to me and pass me by. You don't need me and I don't know why. And all I do every night in my dreams is watch from the sidelines, walking away to a different life. Different life. Different life. Different life. Different Each night I dream of your wedding.
So I was asking Chris about a video I'd seen called The Cosmic Orchestra, and I'd recognized one of the guys from Miles to Dayton in that. So tell me about that, because I found that, one, the music was great. A girl did this voice trumpet thing, and it was wonderful. Tell us about it, and we'll put a link to the video in the chapter marks.
The Cosmic Orchestra is a band that it's one of my favorite bands that I work with. And you were speaking about Miles to Dayton and John Predis, who's from Long Island. But John is just an absolute force of nature. I mean, he just sings amazing, plays acoustic guitar, cello, mandolin, trumpet, and it just
Yeah, and
an absolute.
I think his sisters
And a fine singer-songwriter, really fine
and his sisters
singer-songwriter.
joined him in Miles to Dayton, right?
Yeah, it's a family band, Miles, with his wife and his sisters and his brother-in-law, and the last few years I'm not on their recordings, but I've been playing with them live for the last few years, and I love playing. I love playing with them, and this Cosmic Orchestra is a band that there's a Unitarian church over in Manhasset called the Unitarian Universalist Congregation at Shelter Rock, and they have this thing called Soulful Sundown, and they're really supportive of the arts. And I lead the house band there. I'm the leader of the band, and so I put together this band of some of my favorite musicians, and in the band is Jonathan Predis, who's a fantastic singer, a female vocalist from Massachusetts named Erica Lee, a fine singer-songwriter, amazing singer named Eugene Ruffalo. It's Pat Falco. It plays bass from the Falco, the super talented Falco family. Mark Shulman, who plays guitar, who's just a one-of-a-kind. The singular Mark Shulman is one of the most special guitar players on the planet. And Ben Wish, back to my friend Ben, who plays keyboards in the band. And so it's a 7-piece band, and we're the house band, and we back up all the featured artists that have here at their coffee house, which is part of the Soulful Sundown thing. And we just played the other night with Lucy Kaplansky. But it's been going on. Obviously, during the pandemic, we did some virtual recording, but yeah, it's just a really cool gig. Both the musicians of the Cosmic Orchestra, and we get to back up some really, really talented folks, singer-songwriters, from all over the world. So it's that's one of it's a gig I'm very thankful to be a part of, and love the Cosmic Orchestra.
Yeah, it's. I strongly suggest everyone to check it out. It will put a smile on your face for sure, especially during this holiday season. I tell you, I got to be honest with you, Chris and Steve. This was probably the most informative podcast I've ever been a part of. I learned a lot. It's just, I find it amazing what you do, and you helped me kind of navigate what happens behind the scenes to make a good song, a great album piece, and the parts and pieces to put it together. I tell you, we got to do another podcast because I have a feeling, a little bit more to get out there, and I really look forward to spending some time with you. So, is there anything coming up you want to talk about? Any future events at all, or?
Well, first, let me just thank you for having me on. I think you got something special here. I love your, I think a theme of what we talked about today was curiosity, and I think you have a curiosity that I really liked. And Steve, it's great to have you here too, and asking questions and talking. Because at the end of the day, when we talk about music, I feel like a 13-year-old kid again. I still have that childlike, the excitement about it and music. And like I said before, for me, music has been my best friend my entire life. It's been me through everything. It's been with me, and I think of the friendships, and even it's allowed
Absolutely.
me to meet you guys, because, you heard some of my drumming and, thought maybe it might be worthwhile to have me on. And so I'm just very grateful to be here. And as far as what I'm doing, I'm, off the top of my head, just usual gigs I'm doing, and I'm out there, but I'm always, as part of the regular people I work with, I'm always up for new collaborations. So,
hey, you never know.
I have a website, and I'm on online.
I'll have everything plugged in there. And I usually end my podcast this way, and I'm real sincere about this. We can account for what we have in the bank and what we own. We can't account for the time we have left on this earth, and the fact that you've given me a couple hours here, both you and Steve, thank you so much. I feel very blessed. And I really look forward to seeing you again in person and having an extended conversation. Say hi to your brother, please, and thank him for introducing me to you. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
You got it, guys. Great to speak with you.
Great meeting you, Chris. Great meeting you. Really enjoyed it.
Great to meet you too. We'll see you out there on the trail.
You got it.
Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate the time you spent with us. Please subscribe and comment, and visit us at gigdestiny.com. Till next time, be generous with your joy, keep your spirits high, and let the music take you on a journey. Be well. Peace. Thanks so much for listening. Please rate, review, and comment on the show. We really love to hear from you. And call our listener line at 631-800-3579. Again, thanks so much. Be well.